Hi, I'm Laivo. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for the Birchall Nursery. And today we're here to talk about high density planting and keeping your fruit trees at a reasonable size. I've been involved with the Fair Oaks Hort Center since its inception with my dear friend and colleague, Chuck Ingles, who we miss dearly. Let's get started and talk about some great ideas about how you can control the size of your fruit tree in your yard. All right, size control is a huge issue in your backyard, and so often is the case, people take semi-dwarf as being the means to control that size. That doesn't work, and I'm going to illustrate that for you today, and I really want you to embrace the fact that we're going to talk about pruning as size control. That's your only means to keep the trees at reasonable height. Well, when they tell you that a semi-dwarf tree only gets 15 to 18 feet, let's put into reality what that means. It's a tree this size. Is this the size tree you really want in your backyard? Is this the tree you really want to take care of? Well, of course, then they tell you, well, it only gets 10 to 12 feet, such as in lots of citrus, apples, and pears. Well, of course, here's 12 feet. Is this still reasonable size for the average backyard? I don't think so. So I think we still have to consider size control in this case as well. Okay, but here in the home garden, what we want is our trees at a reasonable height, 7 to 8 feet. Like we can see has been accomplished here at the Fair Oaks Hort Center. I want my trees no taller than my hand extended above my head. Tall people have tall trees and short people have short trees. My trees are this tall. All right, here we go. Primary tool for dwarfing a fruit tree, pruning shears. When I'm out selecting a fruit tree and I'm going to buy something in a container, I'm going to look for something that has nice lower scaffolding. I want that scaffolding to be starting somewhere right around my knee, right in this area right here. Because basically I want that canopy to start nice and low so that I have plenty of area to get that tree to be this size and have plenty of fruit production without letting it get out of control. With a great tree like this freckle-faced nectarine that we purchased at the nursery, there's not much we have to do here because our canopy is nice and low. We're really satisfied with that. And basically all we're going to do on this tree is I'm just going to take out this top right here, very simply, just like that. I'm going to eliminate that top, plant this tree, and just allow the canopy, these lower laterals, to develop that first season. I'll come back later in the summertime and I'll cut these laterals back by 1/3 to allow branching to occur and get a nice bushy specimen off of this tree the first season. Now, if I'm purchasing a bare root tree during the winter time, not in a container, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at still cutting it off at the knee. So I would take and I'd plant it, and as soon as I plant it in the ground, I would still do the same, mark it by my knee, but in this case what I would do is I would cut the entire tree off there so that my canopy begins right below that cut at my knee. Okay, so if this in fact were a bare root though, we'd cut it off, of course at the knee, we would have had a flush of spring growth. So that flush of spring growth grows roughly at about 2 feet. Let's say we'll cut that back by 1/3. That then will flush again during the summertime. We'll get another flush of growth. And then towards the end of the summer, I'm going to cut that back again by about 1/3, just to take and promote a nice bushy tree that first year. So whether it be bare root or from containers, the second year, it's going to flush in the spring. This tree will flush in the spring. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut it back by 1/3 at the end of the springtime, just to check that spring flush. And then we're going to take and we're going to prune it again in the latter part of the summertime by cutting it back 1/3 again. What we'll end up with is a nice bushy tree that second year. All right, given the limitations we have, of course, doing a demonstration in this format, these are the basics, the basic idea of keeping this tree under control. I'd encourage you to go take a look at the UC publication called Home Orchard, a wonderful publication that I had the privilege of contributing to, and look at the practical techniques for controlling the size of your fruit tree in your yard. So once we've taken accepted size control as our way of managing our fruit trees, now we open ourselves up to a whole bunch of different opportunities. So we're going to talk about a little bit about high density planting. 2 trees in one hole, 3 trees in one hole. I like 3 trees in one hole, that's great. Planting them roughly about 24 to say 30 inches on center in a triangle form. That takes a little space and gives you 3 varieties of fruit that you actually can have coming off at 3 different times during the season. So an early, a mid-season, and a late, in the space that you would typically have 1 tree. And here at the Fair Oaks Hort Center, there's some great examples of high density planting. For instance, here's 3 trees in one hole. These are planted roughly about, these are about 3 feet or so on center. Really nice, convenient way to grow your trees in limited space. Another great way to enjoy multiple fruit trees in a limited space in your yard is with a multiple budded selection. So having 3 or 4 varieties that are all on the same single trunk, that is a great way to enjoy fruit all season long in a limited space in your yard. Okay, in any high density planting, you always want to remember one sound rule, and that is never let any one variety dominate. So in a 3 in 1 hole or a 4 in 1 hole or a multiple budded fruit tree with 2 or 3 or 4 varieties grafted onto one tree, never let any of the varieties that are more vigorous overshadow all the rest of the trees and thereby making them less likely to maintain their vigor. This is all great information that's available in that great UC pub, the Home Orchard. All right, another great way to enjoy fruit trees in a limited space is using a hedgerow. And this here at Fair Oaks is a citrus hedgerow that blocks out this not so beautiful fence in the background. But you can use it to block out other unwanted views as well, and you can use many different types of fruit trees to do that. Planting them roughly 4 to 6 feet on center, allowing them to grow somewhat into one another each year, and then of course enjoying successive ripening throughout the season, having fruit to pick off of each one of those varieties during the season. Great way to enjoy fruit trees in a limited space in your yard. Man, another one of my favorite ways to enjoy fruit trees in a limited space is through espalier. There's lots of information out there on how to espalier fruit trees. You want to do it the simplest way possible. There's so many varieties of fruit trees that actually adapted to espaliered growing, and you'd be surprised. Some of them, like figs and pomegranates, for instance. Here we have cherries, peaches, apples and pears, of course, have always been espaliered and grown on a flat surface. That's it. You just grow them on a flat surface. Don't let anything grow outward, and enjoy fruit in a very, very limited space. Hey, and one of my favorite ways to grow fruit trees in a limited space is going to be growing them in containers. And boy, here at the Fair Oaks Hort Center, we got some great examples of growing fruit trees in containers. Here we have some caneberries. Right there we have a blueberry, and boy, I'll tell you what, blueberries are meant to be grown in containers. I recommend them be grown in containers before I recommend they be grown in the ground. Other plants that love being grown in containers are figs and pomegranates, and even grapes love being grown in containers. But the one plant that I think everybody should grow in a container is citrus. Citrus really seems to be very, very well adapted to container growing. And so if you have limited space, say even just a patio in a condominium, you can enjoy a citrus, a fig, a pomegranate, a blueberry. I mean, how much better can you get? Gardening in a limited space, container growing, keep those trees at a reasonable size, enjoy fruit trees in your yard. We'll miss all of our friends and colleagues at this year's Harvest Day. But I tell you what, I really hope that this brief period of time that we spent and the information that I've shared with you will inspire you to get out and enjoy fruit trees and keep them at a more reasonable size in your landscape. We'll look forward to seeing you all in the future, and definitely in the meantime, take advantage of the information that the Master Gardeners have and the wonderful publications that they produce, and make yourself more successful in your garden. And we'll look forward to getting together with you in the future. Thank you.